Hey, what is up guys? It's Brendan here, and today I'm going to be ranking all of my credit cards from S all the way down to D tier and creating a credit card tier list as to where my credit cards stand and my opinions and where they stack up amongst the different rankings when it comes to all of my different credit cards in my current credit card setup, combining and comprised of a total of 10 different credit cards. That's what we're going to be diving into here in today's video. And before we dive into things, of course, I do want to mention if you want to check out any of the cards mentioned here in today's video, you can go check out those links linked down below in the video description. And if you would like to do so, please hit that like button. It really helps out the channel. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into things. Now, I know traditionally tier makers do rank from S to F tier, but because in my own opinions about these, I really don't find any of them to be too terrible. So it kind of goes from S all the way down to D tier. Now, kicking things off, we are going to be starting from my first credit card ever and working our way back just in terms of history and the way I actually went about acquiring these cards in order from beginning to end, and from my oldest card to my most recent card. So kicking things off here, we have the Wells Fargo student credit card. Now this one here, this yellow card here, is actually a Wells Fargo college student card. They actually don't even offer this credit card anymore, and so it actually is a discontinued credit card, and they have since product changed me over to the Wells Fargo Platinum card, which is also sort of like a discontinued credit card, and when it was a actual college card, it was at, I believe, a 1% earnings rate. Now this is my first credit card, or was my first credit card, so it's really not aimed to actually be very good in terms of its rewards. It really just kind of gets your foot in the door in terms of starting and building and establishing credit. Now, of course, they don't really offer this card anymore, so and it doesn't have the best rewards either, but you know, as a starter card, it wasn't too bad, honestly, getting started. So I would put this college card in the D tier. Now we are going to be ranking the college card and the platinum card slightly differently because they technically are kind of very similar, but are slightly different. So now I do have the Wells Fargo Platinum card, which is also just a 1% flat rate rewards. However, one funny thing about Wells Fargo, and I actually discovered this accidentally, but if you spend just below $2 in a statement cycle, you actually get that covered completely for free. Most other credit card companies have the minimum spend at just like $1. So it's almost impossible to buy something for $1 in today's day and age. But if you keep that spend under $2, Wells Fargo will actually credit you. So in a way, it's kind of like getting 2% back on spending $100, but you don't have to spend $100. So honestly, in my opinion, that's actually kind of a nice perk with Wells Fargo. I really just kind of keep this card around just to keep my credit history in good standing. I really don't use this card in all seriousness. It's really just to keep the credit history there because it is my oldest credit card, and that's again the Wells Fargo Platinum card. So in the case, because you do get the extra $2 free, I'll put it in C tier. I'll be a little nice. Honestly, it might even deserve to just be at the top of D tier. We'll see how things shake out at the end here, but for now, I'll put it in C tier. It's not the greatest. Again, 1% is pretty bad. By all means. So moving along here, next in my credit card lineup, we have the Chase Freedom Unlimited. Now, this is the first real credit card, in my opinion, in my actual credit card lineup and list. And this is really my first actual credit card beyond just like a basic kind of starter card, which is where I would put like a college card or even a secured card in that kind of stage. If you're just beginning, you're just brand new credit and you're not able to get anything else in the beginning. So we have the Chase Freedom Unlimited. Now the Chase Freedom Unlimited, if we take a look here at their offer page, they currently offer a $200 bonus after $500 of spend in the first 3 months. Now again, any of the bonus offers that I'm referring to here in this video are accurate as the making of today's video. These may or may not be available when you're watching this video or when you may be going to look at getting these cards. But in my opinion, the Chase Freedom Unlimited card is fairly decent. Now, back when I got it, 1.5% on all purchases was actually kind of the standard for most cashback cards. Now, the nice thing about the Freedom Unlimited is it doesn't just earn regular cashback. It actually does get the UR points, which is Ultimate Rewards points in Chase. Now, this is really important if if you're looking at maximizing UR points and transferring it to the Chase Travel portal. It's not something I personally do, but it is something that maybe you might be interested in, or something that you might do in the future. Now, this is a no annual fee card. I will also stress the other two cards are also no annual fee cards. Actually, every credit card in this list has no annual fee. So just to clear that up as well, no annual fees throughout this entire list of credit cards, because I'm really not a huge fan of them. Maybe I'll get something with an annual fee in the future. Who knows? But for now, these are all no annual fee cards, which kind of are good for establishing a good baseline of credit, which is why I picked these in the beginning as well, just because, I have that credit history, don't have to worry about any kind of annual fees. Now, the Freedom Unlimited is 1.5% on all purchases, and then 3%, they added this later on after I had gotten the card, 3% on dining and drugstores, and then again, 5% on travel purchased through Chase Travel. Haven't really used that, but the dining and drugstores is nice for 3%. However, when I get into another Chase card, you'll kind of soon come to learn it's not necessarily the best. So in my opinion, the Chase Freedom Unlimited used to kind of be the gold standard with a 1.5x if you're really looking at cash back. But nowadays, because of a lot of the 2% cards that exist, which we'll be getting into those a little bit later in this video, I don't find it to be as good of a credit card outside of 3% on dining and drugstores, which honestly, not bad. I do still use it a little bit for that 3% on dining and drugstores, especially if I don't have a 5% card for either of those categories in a given month or quarter. So in terms of where the Freedom Unlimited kind of stacks up, I honestly kind of want to put it at the top of C tier, but I'm going to put it in the B tier for now. Because of the ultimate rewards points, I do find it to be still somewhat useful. Again, it's not necessarily the best in my opinion, just because it is only 1.5x cashback. And if you don't care about the Chase Travel portal, you don't have the premium Chase Travel cards, such as the Sapphire Preferred or Sapphire Reserve, then the UR points honestly don't really make a whole lot of difference to you. It's just cash back at the end of the day, and you'd rather get 2x instead of 1.5x. So, from a cash back perspective. So just depending on how you use the points, it can be better. It can also be kind of lackluster. So I'd say somewhere in the B tier is where it stands for now. Moving along, next we have the Apple Card. Now, the Apple Card, a lot of people don't like this card for some reason. I don't find it to be too bad, in my opinion. Now, when I first got the Apple Card, taking a look here, they actually don't offer this anymore, but they used to have a 5% cash back on Apple purchases when it first launched, right? So I got this pretty close to when it first went live. Now that's only 3% on Apple merchants, like buying directly from Apple. So in a way, it's kind of like a store credit card, but it's not just a store credit card. You can use it anywhere. If you use Apple Pay with your Apple Card, you get 2% everywhere. If you just use the physical Apple Card, it's only 1%. So that's kind of poopy doopy. I can understand why people don't necessarily like that, because 1% is pretty bad. But you do get 2% when any purchase using Apple Pay with the Apple Card, which most places nowadays do take Apple Pay. There's a few retailers that don't, but it's pretty limited. Honestly, most places take Apple Pay. So you can pretty much guarantee almost 2% in most places with just using the Apple Card. And it's a nice, simple, easy to use card. They have a really nice app on the Apple Wallet. So, if you're using an iPhone, cool. Maybe if you're not using an iPhone, I can see why. Okay, maybe the Apple Card doesn't even make sense for you because you don't have an iPhone in that case. But you do also get 3% at certain merchants, and they do rotate this a little bit. Sometimes it might be Lyft rides, Uber rides. Right now, you see Nike and Walgreens. So some merchants do give you 3%, which is kind of like a nice perk. It's again just daily cash back. There's no points or anything. It's pretty much just cash back. You can easily apply it to your current balance when you're going to pay your card. Again, like I said, they don't offer that 5% back intro bonus. That was back when I first got the credit card, and that was a nice perk, especially if you're buying some expensive Apple products. It is nice to use it, especially at that 3%. It is kind of nice to get that from Apple. Again, I got it at 5%, but again, that offer doesn't exist anymore. So doesn't really matter for most people applying for the card today. But where it shakes out, in my opinion, just because of its flat rate 2% that you can kind of expect most places, I'm going to say it's at the top of B. So I'm going to be putting things kind of at different levels within each of these different categories. Again, I can recognize that the Apple Card isn't necessarily the best card because it's not as flexible. Some people just can't really use it. If you're not using an iPhone, it's maybe not as useful for you. And it's kind of basic, right? There's not really a whole lot going on with it, and you're kind of capped out at certain cashback percentages. So, yeah. So we're gonna keep it at the top of B. It's definitely, in my opinion, for my needs, a little bit better than the Freedom Unlimited, but not by that much. Moving along, next we have the Freedom Flex card. Now, this is my card that I got actually right after the Apple card, pretty much, and it is the Freedom Flex card. Now, the Freedom Flex card is a rotating quarterly 5% cashback category card. So each quarter, those bonus categories will rotate and change to different categories. Right now, it might be gas stations and grocery stores, or fitness clubs, or it might be wholesale stores, or depending on what month you're looking at. As you can see here, this couple, it looks like it's groceries for that month. Some months it's gas, some months it's restaurants. So it really just depends on what quarter you come in on this credit card. It does have the exact same bonus structure as the Freedom Unlimited at the moment. And in my opinion, the Freedom Flex is just that much better. I mean, getting 5% cash back on those bonus categories, and they do rotate and they do change. And I understand that maybe you don't necessarily feel like having to track those kind of things. It's really pretty easy to activate them in the Chase app, in my opinion. And it does also give you 3% on dining, including takeout and drugstores. So you also get that 3% on dining and drugstores, and then just 1% on all other purchases. So I'd recommend not using it for just any purchase, but if you're in those quarterly bonus categories, or if you're using it for dining and drugstores, can be kind of nice. And sometimes if it is restaurants, I've actually gotten as high as 7% cash back when it is the restaurant category, because it kind of adds, for some reason, Chase, please don't fix this, but it basically gives you the 5% bonus plus an extra couple percentages because of the standard 3% on dining. So it doesn't add up quite to 8%, like 5 plus 3. It somehow gets it at like 7. I'm happy with that. That's cool. That's a nice little perk there. So the Freedom Flex, that 5% bonus categories and no annual fee, and it has a pretty nice little basic bonus if you're brand new. This is honestly one of my favorite credit cards. It's also very easy to activate the categories in the Chase app. It's very nice and simple to use. So I'm going to put this one in the A tier. Honestly, kind of debating putting it in S, but I'm going to put it in A because it's still a very good card, but sometimes the rotating categories kind of suck, and then it's kind of like not useful if the rotating categories suck. So I'm going to keep it in A. It is a very good card, and if for those of you guys who maybe are looking at the Sapphire Preferred, Sapphire Reserve, and you're looking at getting those travel points, then you can also use the Freedom Flex to earn the ultimate rewards points in the Chase portal. So that's also a really nice perk there for those of you guys who are using it. If you're just using it for cashback, it's still also a really good card. So I'm going to put that in the A tier. It is probably one of my favorite credit cards that I do have. Moving on, next in this list, we have the Amazon Visa card. Now, this is the Prime Visa card as well as the regular Amazon card. Now, I actually don't have Amazon Prime, so I just have the regular Amazon Visa card. So if you have Prime, you'll get the Prime card. If you don't have Prime, you'll get the regular card. So and each of those do come with different earnings and redemptions. So with the Prime card, I believe it's 5% back on Amazon. With the regular non-Prime card, it's 3% back on Amazon purchases, and that is cash back as well. It is separate from the ultimate rewards points, and I'm not sure, I couldn't find a way to transfer it. So I think it is kind of just limited to sort of the Amazon bubble within Chase, because it is actually still a Chase card, but it is an Amazon branded card. So it does populate in the Chase portal, but the points are separate from the Freedom Flex and the Freedom Unlimited. Now, it does also get you 2% on paying at the pump or gas stations, but a lot of other cards can get you 2%, so that's not really necessarily the biggest thing. And it does also earn like 1% on a few other things, not really worth mentioning. It's really for that 3% on Amazon, which is kind of nice just to consistently have 3% on Amazon, and they do give you an Amazon gift card when you first sign up. Again, I'm not sure exact dollar amounts on that. On the sign-up bonus, you can feel free to learn more about it, but the Amazon Visa card, not a bad card in my opinion, right? 3% on Amazon is a nice, easy card, pretty simple to have as well, and it just expands your overall credit portfolio. Now, in terms of my setup, again, not necessarily my favorite, and honestly, I mean, I shop at Amazon, yes, but not that much. So like having this card isn't super useful in my strategy. So I'm going to put it kind of in the top of C tier. You know, if I shopped on Amazon a lot, and maybe if I had the Prime card, especially at that 5% on the Prime card, I could see that being, you know, like an A tier card if you're shopping at Amazon a lot. I don't personally shop at Amazon that much, but when I do, I get 3%. It's nice. It's fine. It kind of hits the baseline for a decent credit card. But it's really not like as useful as maybe some of the other more flexible cards that you can use in more places or just earn more points in general with other cards. Again, especially if you're looking at your total spend on a month-to-month basis and you're really not spending that much on Amazon, it might not be that useful. But if you do spend a lot on Amazon, I could easily see this card, you know, going a lot higher in the tier lists. Moving on, next in this list, we have the Citi Custom Cash. Now, the Citi Custom Cash is one of my personal favorite credit cards. They do also have a bonus offer where if you spend $1,500 on purchases, you get $200 cash back in the first 6 months. Pretty easy to hit, in my opinion. And the Custom Cash works where you're getting a 5% cash back on your top eligible spend category each billing cycle up to $500 of spend. So that is limited, but honestly, it's pretty easy to hit. Staying below that $500 to spend, especially if you're buying groceries. And the nice thing about the Custom Cash is it is basically a wild card that you can slot in for any category on a given billing statement or month that you don't have another rotating 5% card to fill in that category for the 5% cash back. Now, it is limited to certain categories. This is limited to restaurants, gas stations, grocery stores, select travel, select transit, select streaming services, drugstores, home improvement stores, fitness clubs, and live entertainment. Personally, I've used this the most when it comes to gas stations, grocery stores, and live entertainment. And I have also used it for some travel as well, like booking flights and things like that. So it does work well for flights and hotels and concerts with live entertainment. The other nice thing is Citi does have a lot of like concert series things where they may do a Citi promotion to use the card in order to get early access to tickets, which is kind of like a nice little side benefit. And you're able to get 5% with live entertainment. So the nice thing about the Citi Custom Cash is it's just very flexible, very dynamic, and it is only unlimited 1% cash back on all other purchases. But that 5% cash back on up to $500 to spend every single billing cycle, which is every month, effectively, is really nice. And restaurants can also be a good category. It's just that restaurants right now have been covered by a lot of other 5% cards. So I haven't really had a chance to use it too much for restaurants, but there's just so many categories here that it really is an amazing card. Definitely a must-have in your setup. Honestly, pretty much for anybody using a credit card. So this is going to be the first S tier card. I just find it to be so flexible and so useful. And it's just very easy. You don't have to activate it either. You basically just are like, okay, it's a billing cycle. This billing cycle, I log in. Okay, I'm going to use this on grocery stores this quarter, right? So you can easily and dynamically change it depending on where you want to move your spend on a given month or billing cycle. So it is a really good card. I definitely recommend it for anybody in the cashback space looking to maximize their total cashback rewards. Now, I will say, it does also have no annual fee. Again, like I said, for all cards in this list. Now, the Custom Cash, definitely one of the best, hands down. And it's so good even that I have 2 of them now. I will leave a link to that video here in the cards and in the description if you're interested in maybe getting 2 Custom Cash cards. Not going to dive into too much about how that works in this video, but it effectively means getting a double cash. Now, next, moving in this list, we have the Citi Double Cash, speaking of that, which you can product change to a second Custom Cash if you want to. Again, Citi, you just have to contact their customer service and ask to do a product change. I'll leave a link to that video if you want to learn more about how that process works. But effectively, the Double Cash is our first flat rate 2% credit card. And this was my first 2% credit card, because it is just 2% unlimited cash back, 1% when you buy and 1% when you pay. By definition of cash back, it already beats the Freedom Unlimited because that's only 1.5, whereas the Citi Double Cash is 2%, right? So it's 2x instead of 1.5x, and it's just very easy. It does also have a sign-up bonus, basically the same sign-up bonus as the Custom Cash. Now, if you do plan on getting these cards back-to-back like what I did, I would recommend giving it at least I think 90 days is the minimum between these cards. It might be more. It might be 180 days. I'm not sure. You can ask maybe Citi customer service or maybe search around on Reddit. But I would give some space between the two applications if you're looking at getting these two cards back to back. I did give it at least, I believe I gave it 6 months of a break. Maybe even almost a year. I think I gave it about 6 months between these two cards when I was getting them. But the Double Cash is a great 2% flat rate card. It's essentially the gold standard for getting 2% back. Now, for the longest time, I did just use my Apple Card for flat rate 2%. But for the places that don't accept Apple Pay, it's kind of annoying. So I figured, get another 2% card that can actually be used just anywhere. So that's the Citi Double Cash card. In terms of rankings, this one, I would give it probably a solid B tier. It's not necessarily A or S. It's not necessarily the best, but it is a pretty good card given the fact that it does kind of beat out the Apple Card in terms of its overall rewards basis, because the Double Cash does get 2% just basically anywhere that you go, which is a nice perk compared to the Apple Card. You're able to use it in more places that don't necessarily have Apple Pay, but you get the flat rate 2%. Now, I did product change it to a second custom cash, but if you do want to keep it just as a basic 2% card, you can also choose to do that. Just depends on where your spend is and what you find to be most useful. Speaking of 2% cards, the next card in the list here is the Wells Fargo Active Cash Card. Now, this is also a flat rate 2% card. So, Brennan, why do you have two flat rate 2% cards? Exactly my point. I basically got the Wells Fargo Active Cash Card to replace my Citi Double Cash once I had product changed it to a second custom cash. So, now I still have a 2% flat rate credit card. The nice thing, pretty good bonus as well, it's just flat rate 2% card. So really not much to say about it in terms of usability and all that, but I would give it a pretty solid rating. Again, I'm going to give it kind of right there with the Double Cash. And honestly, it is maybe slightly better just because it is 2% as soon as you spend on it. It's not like when you have to go pay, because the one caveat and the trick to understand here when the 1% is you pay, make sure you don't use your credit card points to pay the card balance when you're paying, because otherwise you will forfeit the 1% earnings. You do need to pay that with your bank balance. So it's a little bit of a workaround, slight inconvenience in terms of how the rewards are earned, because it is 1% when you buy and 1% when you pay. So make sure that when you're paying, you don't use your Citi thank you points. Now, you can always just redeem your Citi thank you points for cash back and just have it mailed to you as a check or deposited directly to your bank account. And then you use that money to then pay the card, and it would get you the 2%. But just make sure you don't use pay with points. Otherwise, you won't typically earn that 1% as you pay, at least in my experience. So just keep that in mind as well with the Double Cash. Slight caveat. But the Wells Fargo Active Cash, very basic, unlimited 2% cash rewards on purchases, no annual fee. A very easy card to understand. It's a solid B tier, right? It's not necessarily getting you into those higher level ranges, but it is a pretty solid card. Moving on, next in this list, and effectively it replaces the Double Cash for me in my current setup. Next in this list, we have the U.S. Bank we have the U.S. Bank Plus Visa Signature Card. It's a little bit of a mouthful, kind of hard to understand, but it's the U.S. Bank Cash Plus Visa Signature Card. It's a very long name, so you gotta have to read it there just to make sure it's the right one, but it's the Cash Plus from U.S. Bank. Now, this one is a little bit of an underrated card, and not that many people are actually aware of it. Now, the sign-up bonus is decent, right? $200 after you spend $1,000, pretty similar, standard, but the 5% cash back on your first $2,000 in combined eligible purchases each quarter on 2 categories that you choose. This is really where this card shines. It's also no annual fee. Where it shines is those 5% cashback categories, and these are cashback categories that you don't typically see on most credit cards. This includes fast food, home utilities, TV, internet, and streaming, department stores, cell phone, electronic stores, as well as sporting goods stores, gyms, fitness centers, ground transportation, select clothing stores, furniture stores, and movie theaters. Now, what I use it the most on here for the 5% categories, and pretty much I've perma-locked these, is home utilities and TV, internet, and streaming. So this is, and the nice thing about TV, internet, and streaming, that includes internet services, TV services, as well as streaming services like Disney Plus, Hulu, whatever you might be buying. And then home utilities includes anything from water, electric, gas, any kind of home utility, trash services as well. those are two big spend categories for a lot of people, especially if you're maybe renting or owning somewhere. If you pay a lot of your own bills, those are going to be high spend categories for you. Maybe cell phone as well could be a high spend category, depending on how your cell phone plan is kind of laid out. And those are nice categories to get 5% cash back on. Those are also cashback categories that you pretty much don't see anywhere else on any other kind of credit card. So for that alone, I get it is a little niche, right? It's a little niche because not everybody actually could get value out of these categories. I would say and argue that pretty much anybody can get value, out of the Citi custom cash categories because they're pretty broad, right? These are more like popular categories people spend on. The only problem with the US Bank one is these are kind of niche categories. Not necessarily everybody has a decent amount of spend in these categories every month because a lot of these are like stores, maybe areas you're not necessarily spending that much every month outside of really the home utilities category, maybe the cell phone, TV, internet, and streaming. Outside of those, these aren't necessarily the best categories, but for those categories, they are really, really good. So for me personally, I'm going to have to give this one bottom of A tier just because these are unique categories that really no other credit card covers at the moment. So this is kind of a very unique value proposition. I get not necessarily everyone gets value from that, but for me personally, I'm going to give it the bottom of A because it is still a really good card. But because it is a little bit niche, I can't really give it the S tier treatment, but I'll give it bottom of A. I think it deserves a place there. I think the Freedom Flex is still a little bit better and more versatile. Just because it does rotate categories and you maybe get some other things in there. It's maybe more useful for more people, but the Cash Plus is still pretty good in my opinion. Moving on, last but not least in this tier list, we have the Discover It Cashback Card. This is the Discover It Cashback Credit Card. Now, this one is another 5% rotating cashback card, and is actually it is my newest credit card, and it is one of my favorite credit cards because it does give you rotating 5% cash back, and at the end of the first year, they do end up doubling it. Now, depending on when you're watching this video, they may or may not have that cashback match offer, but the cashback match can be really, really nice, and that's within that first year. And then they also have the rotating 5% cashback categories. This is things like grocery stores, restaurants, gas stations, up to 5%, on that 5% cashback. And within that first year with the cashback match bonus, that's effectively a 10% cashback category. Realistically. And then it's 1% on everything back, which, everything else not that great. But in the first year, that's effectively 2% on everything back because it's that cashback match. Again, depending on when you're watching this video, they may or may not have that offer. But even regardless of the cashback match program and what it looks like, the other nice thing about Discover is they're pretty forgiving with applying and getting a lot of people in the door. So no matter where your credit score range is, Discover does have a pretty high approval odds for a lot of people. And I definitely do like that as well because, they don't really turn down a lot of people. A lot of people can get this card. And then also another nice little kind of caveat side bonus is you can also customize it with colorful designs. I really like this beach one. This New York City one's kind of cool. Or just even a colored card, right? If you like pink, if you like red, if you like certain colors, you can choose and apply different designs. They are also kind of always cycling these out, which is kind of like a nice little side benefit to this card that not really any other card kind of offers as much customization options as Discover. Now, in terms of the actual rewards rates with the 5% earnings, like you're getting that each quarter. Grocery stores, restaurants. Right now, it's restaurants. It's effectively 10% in the first year, right now on that 5% cash back. And even after the first year, 5% cash back is still a really good card. So in terms of where it stands in the tier list, I'm gonna have to give it the S tier treatment because it is right up there with the custom cash in terms of the flexibility. Now, the reason why I kind of give it S tier. And actually, now that I think of it, maybe it's top of A. Maybe it's actually right there with the Freedom Flex. Because honestly, now that I think about it, outside of the cashback match in the first year, which could bump it to S tier, just because of the cashback match in the first year. Without that, if you don't necessarily have that bonus, it kind of puts it back down to the Freedom Flex level. Because it is essentially the same as the Freedom Flex, right? It's rotating 5% categories on, very similar categories. So I would say it's kind of right there with the Freedom Flex. But in that first year, it has S tier treatment because it's basically like 10% on the 5% categories. which is really nice because, you know, and if you sign up, depending on when you sign up, you might also get a $100 extra bonus with them. Again, this is all caveats depending on what's available with Discover, but depending on when you're signing up, you can get a decent bonus offer with them. And that's kind of in that S tier category, and they do approve a lot of people as well, which is also a nice little perk. So with the bonuses and the signups, I would give it S tier. Regular card after its first year kind of drops back down to A because it's really pretty close to the Freedom Flex, where the custom cash still kind of reigns supreme just because you can choose the categories. You're not stuck, right? And the categories are actually really good categories compared to the US bank categories, a little bit too niche. The flat rate 2% cards, kind of at that B tier. You know, it's flat rate 2%. It's great. It's solid, but it's not really like jumping you up and down at that 5% range, which is where the S and A tiers land. The C tier is kind of just like mid-level. It's like, it's okay, right? It's a little bit of extra cash back, that 3%, and that free like $2, but really kind of not really anything worth mentioning. And the D tier, again, like I said, it's a discontinued card. It's kind of garbo. So this is where the rankings end up shaking out, ranking out all of my credit cards that I currently have in my credit card setup. Again, I would recommend checking out these credit cards. Links are linked down below in the video description if you do want to check out any of the credit cards mentioned here in today's video. If you would like to leave a comment down below as to what your credit card setup looks like. Do you agree or disagree with my tier list and rankings of all of my credit cards? These are all no annual fee, primarily cashback focused credit cards. I get that you might be able to get some travel perks with the membership rewards points. Not the membership rewards, the ultimate rewards points with Chase, with the Freedom Flex or the Freedom Unlimited. But I get that it's not necessarily useful for everybody. This is really a cashback focused strategy so far. You know, maybe looking towards the future, I might be looking at maybe some other travel cards in terms of what kind of cards I might add to this mix and where the rankings may shift later in the future. You know, maybe some travel cards, maybe some hotel or airline branded specific cards for the sign-up bonuses. At the end of the day, this is a pretty complete cashback setup. There's really not a whole lot else to add to this mix, in my opinion, to really get any better when it comes to cashback. So hopefully you guys found this video helpful in ranking all of my current credit card setup. If you guys enjoyed this video, then be sure to smash that like button, hit the subscribe button as well, and notification bell so you're notified whenever I upload a new video. Anyway, guys, that's all for today's video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.